Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter. It's great to be with you. I am your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Here on the literally behind me is the Sea of Cortez. Welcome to Cabo San Lucas. It's good to be with you. We are going to talk. I've had several of you email and ask me about what's going on as the Raiders are sitting here now under 3 weeks away from the draft. What's the process? What's going on? Are the Raiders still trying to figure things out? So I'm going to take you inside the building and explain to you, under 3 weeks out now, what's happening inside the Raiders facility. Number one, you need to know the hay is in the barn. And what I mean by that statement is they are well aware of who all the prospects are. They know who all the prospects are, and everybody is graded on a draft board. And now, as with the hay in the barn, I mean, you may go check out a workout or something if you think it's close between a couple of guys, but you know basically where everybody fits. I would not say that the draft board is completely locked down yet, but you certainly see it, and there won't be a ton of changes. The other thing is now they're looking for separation issues. So let me give you a couple of examples. Now, if you've got, let's say, 10 guys with the same score at a bunch of different positions. Now, remember, I told you the best play teams take BPA, best player available. But if you've got 10 guys with the same score, 10 guys that you rate all as the exact same level or value of a player, then if you're sitting there, you're going to always go with need. So let's say you're sitting there and you're the Raiders and you're sitting there with your second round pick or your third round pick. And you're like, okay, listen, we we're very content here. We've got several guys that we are very content picking here. So what would separate them? And so you're looking for separation issues. I remember one time, it was not the Raiders, but there was a team that had two quarterbacks with the exact same grade. So they literally at that point looked for separation issues. Is there anything that we think separates them? We think everything about them on the field is the same, character is the same, all of it's the same. Is there one thing that we think separates them? And I remember that team made the decision. One of the quarterbacks was married and had a child and was very happily married. The other one was single and, living the single life, which there's nothing wrong with that. And so they decided, you know what? We like the guy that's going to have the wife and kid at home. And for them, that was a separation issue. Other people may not care, but they're looking for separation issues. Now, you may remember I shared this with you a couple of years ago, but it's a true story. Um, I know an owner who would go out to dinner with top prospects. And I'll tell you a funny story. They had a very high pick one year in the draft, and he wanted to take three guys that they thought they were going to have their pick of those three guys. And he takes them all out to dinner together. Now, I've heard people say, why would they bring guys in on a visit on the same day? Sometimes you want to see how do they react in a competitive environment. So the owner takes these three guys out to a very expensive, lavish prime rib restaurant. And they go out for prime rib, and two guys salt and peppered their prime rib before they tasted it. Another guy tasted it and put salt on it and goes back and tells his people, if it's down to those three, I want this kid. And the kid was the one who didn't salt or pepper his food prior to tasting it. And he explained to them that he had been taught that people who salt and pepper their food before they eat it are prejudging it. They look at it, nope, it's going to need it. They don't even try it. What if it had plenty on it? And he had been told this by a team psychologist that you, especially at a quarterback position, you don't want people who prejudge things. So you don't want a quarterback coming to a line of scrimmage saying, I already know what they're going to do. No, you want the quarterback to come to the line of scrimmage, stop, look at everything and analyze it, and then make his decisions, not prejudge, because you're going to prejudge wrongly. And so they're literally looking for separation issues right now. They know who's got character issues. I remember a guy 2 weeks before the draft, um, who there were some concerns about him, but everybody knew it. Now, I'm not going to name any names, but you all can go back and remember. Well, you can just remember Warren Sapp was one. There was an offensive lineman out of Mississippi where news broke late, and people are like, oh, this guy's falling because of some character concerns that came up late. I've been told by numerous people the NFL already knew about all of those. It's just teams sometimes will leak stuff out. It's like you'll see leak Wonderlic scores, which don't really matter anymore, but they would leak stuff like that, trying to get teams as fan base. Oh, we don't want that guy now, hoping that he drops. Most of the leaks that get public, most, not all, but I'd say 95% at this point, teams already know all of it. So most of the leaks that get public now are usually from a team that's trying to get a player to drop. So again, they're looking for separation issues right now. The third thing is the board is not set in stone. I mentioned that a minute ago, but it's pretty good set. I had a executive who I texted for this podcast, and I asked them that question about the board, and they said, "Well, the cement's been poured, but it hasn't cured, so you can still move a guy." But again, sometimes if you move them, it's only minuscule, like I talked about the quarterbacks, because you already know your security people have been looking at most of these guys for 2 or 3 years and a lot over the last year. There's no surprises. Gray Zabel goes and kills it at the Senior Bowl, but people already knew a lot about his character and everything else. So he helped himself at the Senior Bowl, but that was a while ago, weeks ago. So there again, it's not set in stone, but the concrete's been poured and it's curing. So now let's look at three things that they're doing. If those first three things are three facts about what's going on inside the building, now we're going to look at three things they are doing. I can tell you this, nearly every day the Raiders are mocking this draft. Now I know that they want to use AI more than anyone and embrace AI. I've not been able to confirm this, so this is Hondo opinion. I know for a fact they're doing mock drafts, and I would bet that they're also using AI. Remember, last year I thought they did thousands, but let's say hundreds to be sure. Yeah, and they did not do one mock draft where Brock Bowers made it to 13. I mean, he was a 1-1, meaning this guy has all the skills to be a number one overall pick. They never saw him go into 13. So that's where AI will help, but they're looking at every scenario in those top six. But then they're going to look at other scenarios about teams potentially. If these are the five guys that go, who's interested? Who would be interested in moving up to six if the Raiders aren't? Again, I think there are three players, and I have reason to believe this, that the Raiders would take at six. And I think there's one, potentially two, that if they didn't get a high enough offer, they would feel comfortable taking those guys at six, but would hope for an offer. So again, there's mock drafts going on. Number two is they're still actively looking at trades. I mentioned two trades that I was made aware of at the owners' meetings, where these are trades that the Raiders are exploring, and either teams looking at the Raiders for potential trades or the Raiders looking at other teams. So that's going on presently as we speak. And then the other things they're looking for is post draft free agent moves. You're going to see some free agents get brought in, and you're going to be like, well, why didn't they sign them? Sometimes they're doing that because they may think, okay, here's a guy we like. And if we can't get somebody in the draft, we can go back and sign this guy. Some of it's just simple due diligence, but that's really what's going on right now. The hay is in the barn. You have spring games going on for other teams. So you have some scouts that are even out looking at the 26 class right now. But a lot of the hay's in the barn. You're going to see a lot of the executive staff, going through stuff, scouts going through stuff. Then another thing that they're doing right now is, let's say they're looking at a defensive lineman, which I know they are. If they're not big name ones, maybe they're day 3 guys. So you're having Robbie Leonard. Hey, Robbie, here's 3 guys we got with the same grade. What do you think? Then Robbie does his analysis. Then it goes to Patrick Graham. Patrick, what are you thinking? This is what Robbie thinks. And he's like, yeah, I agree with Robbie, or no, I don't. I like this guy. Then it goes up the ladder to Pete. Then it goes all the way up to the executive staff and all the way to Spy Tech, obviously. So there's a lot now that's plenary in nature, but very important. The Raiders want to know if they're sitting there and they got a chance to pick somebody and they're like, yeah, I can pick this guy here, but I know there's a free agent available. I'm going to get to pay less money, or I'm going to pay more money, but he's going to contribute faster. I would rather go with the free agent. Then they can trade out of their pick. So they're looking at trade scenarios. Okay. Then they're looking at possible drops. So they're calling teams saying, hey, in the second round, hey, in the third round, what do you think your price would be to move down? Now, you don't tell who, and you ask those questions because what if you're sitting there with your third round pick and there's nobody valued at where you want? So I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm not going to tell you what team it was. May have been the Raiders, may not. I covered a team that had a pick and they were looking, and it was a mid-round pick. Let's just say it was a fourth rounder, but I'm not telling you that. And I'm going to make up a position, a draft position. So you can't go back and look at all the teams I drafted who had the 15th pick overall in the fourth round. I'm telling you those are not accurate for this story, but I'm using it as an example. So they're sitting there and they had no player on the board that they felt was going to drop to them at 15 that was worth getting picked. But they also didn't think anyone else was going to move up. But they had a guy that they had a high third round grade on that was about 10 picks away. In their opinion, he was the best player on the board. And so they make a call and they move up. I think they gave, well, I'm not going to say what it was. I don't want you to go look, but they gave away a 7th rounder and whatever pick that was to move up 10 spots to go get a guy that they had a high third round grade on. And by the way, the guy ended up becoming an all pro. But the point was they were able to identify those things. They knew what trade ups would look like. The Raiders have already reached out to everybody, found out what's available, what's not available, all of that. So, if you see something 2 days before the draft, Raiders have contacted Tennessee about moving up to 1 for Cam Ward. It's already been done. They already know exactly what the cost is to move everywhere. John Spytek is thorough. He's a lot like Telesco and Ziegler. And he has a lot more experience than Ziegler had. Not as much experience, but I'll tell you what he did had in Tampa Bay. The owners let management run the team, and he was essentially the GM. So Tom Telesco had to deal with owners that could be intrusive. I mean, it's their team. That's not really intrusive, but Spytek's got a ton of experience. He knows essentially or basically what every pick's going to cost him if he wants to move. And so that's what they're doing right now. They're literally going through their board, looking at scenarios, looking at, okay, if this kid is here, is he worth picking here if I know I've got this free agent? They're watching all of it. I know teams that had one guy on the phone as a draft goes on. So that, let's say they're coming into the 4th round, 15 pick, and they need a wide receiver. And there's not somebody there they like more than, and I'm not saying this is Raiders or not, just being hypothetical here. Hey, we think Hunter Renfrow is better than a 415, going to come with a little bit of a price, but we worked him out. We know exactly what we're getting, and he's got a track record. We know he's no problem in the draft. So they would call and say, hey, we'll sign you. And they come to an agreement. Not saying that's gone on with Hunter. I'm just using that as an example. So those are the things right now that's going in. The hay's in the barn, but it doesn't mean you've stacked it in the final position. The concrete's been poured, not cured. So you can still move some guys. I would say a week away, your draft board is completely set. Nothing's moving. Because by then, when you hear rumors, some of it's just rumor. I'm going to tell you one other story and I'm going to let you go. But I know a team that desperately wanted a legit, exceptional lineman. Not going to say if it's offense or defense. And literally, shortly before the draft starts, rumor flew around about a major character issue. The guy drops and the team picked him. Okay, that's slander to me. That's slander. And you cost that guy a lot of money with a lie. And had that guy done his due diligence and found out who they were, I think he could have sued him. But the point is, that kind of stuff's going to go on. You just have to be prepared and positioned for it. And there you go. Now, I want to address one other issue. I've told you many times that the people that I trust as quarterback drafters have said to me how much they think bad drafting is now, and that they think there could have been 3 quarterbacks taken before the Raiders pick. That is a dream scenario for the Raiders. Now, I think there could be 2. Still maybe 3 because there's enough bad drafting teams, but even the bad draft ones know how good next year's class is. So they think, okay, if we don't go get a quarterback, we may improve a little, but still be in the hunt for one of the 6 quarterbacks next year. This is going to be a fascinating draft. Absolutely fascinating. I cannot wait. I think you're excited. If you're a football fan, you're excited. And thanks for joining me today. Again, just digging in and talking and grasping really about what's going on inside the building. Now, this weekend in podcast on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be talking about the new look Raiders and really what's going on new and how it's going on. We're going to talk about Mark Davis and the changing face of the NFL. Got some really good stuff on Mark Davis you're going to like. So again, great podcast through the weekend from down here in Cabo San Lucas. Thank you for joining us. I hope that each and every one of you have an absolutely terrific weekend. Thanks for joining me. God bless each of you.